Zoe and Megzy back in the house, in the lab, I should say. It is so nice to see you. I feel like I have not seen you in 100 years, which is just absolutely wild because it's really only been, 3 weeks?
Well, when did we would have last seen each other when we were here?
Yeah, so
Maybe?
3 or 4 weeks ago.
Yeah, 4
which
weeks
for
ago.
us
That's
is
a long time.
a long time. It's
Yeah.
like 100 years. So
And to not even have like a Zoom.
yeah,
We usually
that's
would do
what
like,
it is.
Yeah.
You being away, which I'm excited to talk about today, I had separation anxiety for sure.
I wish I could say the same, but I didn't have time to have separation anxiety. I was just in it.
Well, speaking of time and anxiety and all those things, probably a good opportunity to just start the way that we always do and just take a moment to catch our breath. So let's just settle in. If you can, close down the eyes and let's take a big breath in through the nose. Soften the shoulders, the body, relax as you let go. Let's begin. Before we start this episode, as a very passionate Warramungu Yari woman, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation as the traditional custodians of the land we are recording this podcast from and honour their ongoing connection to country, community and culture. I wouldn't be me without the sacrifices of my ancestors, and for that I pay my deepest respect and extend that respect with love to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and all elders past and present. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land. Let's
Check in. What's been keeping you rushing since I've been gone? Or just in general?
Everything. It's funny because I thought once I got through September, things were going to settle. I was like, oh, now that September is done, I've got a little bit more time back.
You know, on that, sorry to interrupt, but I did notice that you were like, I'm going to have so much time, but you were telling like everyone. And I was like, you're giving up the time by telling everyone how much you have of it.
And if anything, I've been busier than I was in September. Ridiculous.
Does not surprise me, doll.
But honestly, what has been keeping me busy at the moment, and is probably a bit of a good flow on from our previous conversation talking about beauty standards, but it's been that keeping up with the beauty standards. And I would say I'm a relatively low maintenance person in terms of the treatments and the what I go and do. The main things that I do consistently reoccurring are my nails, which I love. That's one thing that I love to have nice nails.
And they look great, by the way.
Thank you. They're probably a little bit more pointy than I would like.
I feel like they're longer than usual, but
they
I like
are.
it.
I've gone a bit clawy with these.
I'm into it.
I do like. But yes, so nails, I get my eyebrows and my moustache waxed on the reg by my girlfriend Katrina, who I call Brad.
Waxed or threading?
Waxed. Yeah. So shout out to you, Brad, or Katrina. Her name's Katrina, but we call each other Brad, which is a story that doesn't need to be shared on here. She's the best. But
That's Angus's wife.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. Shout out to Angus.
And Kat. It's so funny because she's somebody now that I consider one of my really good friends, but we don't get to see, like, we don't spend a great deal of time together. In fact, we have a little Christmas dinner booked in for next week, but our catch-ups are getting my eyebrows done. And because I'm a hairy gal, like my eyebrows and my moustache grows back so quickly. So I'm like messaging her every 2 weeks and I'm like, hey, Brad.
You do realise that you're paying her to be your friend.
Yeah, literally. And then the other thing is laser. And I've literally come from a laser appointment this morning, and that is in Essendon. So I drive around everywhere to go to get appointments done, like Essendon for my laser, which, by the way, I want to give a bit of a shout out to this laser place as well because it has changed the game for me. I've always been a just get a Brazilian and underarms with my laser because I'm a sun person. So as soon as the sun's out,
True, yeah.
I'm in it. And that's always impacted being able to get the rest of my body. And I've always been quite inconsistent with laser. But I found this place, which is why I travel to Essendon for it, because there aren't many of these laser machines that enable you to, if you've got fake tan, if you've been in the sun, you can still go and get laser. So, yeah, coming from there, rushing here, keeping that up, because I've probably done 6 sessions of that now, so I'm spaced them out a little bit, but you still got to go every sort of 5-6 weeks initially to, get rid of all the hair. So now I'm like a baby seal ready for summer. Let's go. But it's just like a constant thing. And I'm like, am I doing this because it does make me feel confident, but I feel like there's that pressure of like, having to look a certain way and have, I feel a little bit insecure if I leave the house and I've got hairy brows or hairy lip or hairy arms. And it's like, but why?
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's a whole nother conversation, which we've sort of touched on with our beauty standards, but that is what's keeping me rushing at the moment.
I mean, the time that it would take you to drive from Elwood to Essendon is like probably the same amount of time it takes me to get from the peninsula
in
to
traffic.
Here.
Yeah, totally in traffic. And then my eyebrows are in Blackrock. So that's, and I'm going to see Katrina like at least every 3 weeks.
Really?
Yeah, like my brows grow back so fast.
They look great.
Thank you.
It's worth it.
But yeah, and then my nails. And then, the thing with nails, and you've got to commit like at least a solid 2 hours to sitting in there every sort of 3 or 4 weeks. And it's just like, let's go to Sri Lanka actually, which is what we're going to talk about, where none of this stuff is even a thing. Who cares?
Oh my God, yeah, seriously.
But anyway, so that's what's keeping me rushing at the moment. What about you?
Yeah, so speaking of Sri Lanka, so at the time of this recording, I have just returned from a couple of weeks in Sri Lanka, 2 weeks. And we're going to talk about this in a little bit more detail, but I host a surf and yoga retreat in Sri Lanka every year. And so I got back, what day did I get back? It must have been Tuesday. And my flight was quite delayed. So I didn't end up getting home back on to the peninsula until like, I don't know, maybe 7:30 p.m. And I was supposed to get in like, I don't know, maybe 4:30-ish. 5:30-ish. And so by the time I like got home, saw a guy, patted my dog for a bit, like chucked all my stuff out of the car, it was like time for bed and I was exhausted because I'd been traveling for, with the delay. It was just exhausting. But then I had a full day of work the next day. So on Wednesday, I had 7 clients.
Insanity.
Booked in. So yeah, I was up early, like just getting myself back into therapy mode, kind of questioning how do I do this again? What am I doing? And yeah, into 7 clients. And then that finished up at, I don't know, maybe 6 p.m. on Wednesday night. And then Thursday, I had 5 clients booked in, plus like a whole bunch of work that I'd been neglecting, not neglecting, but just couldn't get to while I was away because it wasn't really a holiday for me. It was like a work trip. So I was pretty on all of the time. And then now here we are. On Friday, the next day, podcast recording. So we've been having chats in the background trying to figure out what the fuck we're going to do today. So that's what's been keeping me rushing, just like from one thing to the next. Like I have not had a second just to pause. And also jet lag. Like I was saying
what's
to
the
you,
time difference?
Yeah, so it's 5.5 hours behind. So it's like that awkward jet lag where it's not enough to like fully blame everything on jet lag, but it's like, yeah, just my sleep has been a little bit disrupted. But anyway, first world problems.
I just think like being on a plane and then like you said, the delay, like that in itself is tiring.
Yeah, and like sleeping on an airplane because it's a 10-hour flight, about a 10-hour flight, but also from where I was, it was a 3-hour drive. So I got picked up by my driver at like 6 p.m, was in the car for 3 hours. Luckily, I actually fell asleep for the whole time. I couldn't believe how lucky I was. I feel like I just got in the car and I woke up and I was at the airport. I was
That's
like,
nice.
Sick. But then, then had to wait because of the delay. There was like some issue with the plane, which is always like gives you just that little bit of anxiety as well. I feel like lately there's been so many stories in the news about like airplane things. Have you noticed that, or is that just me? I feel like there's been like a lot of things.
And it is one of my like great fears in life, like being on a plane and something going wrong?
Mine's more claustrophobia. My
Yeah.
like one massive phobia is that I'm pretty claustrophobic, and it's actually getting worse with age. For me.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. But my dad was the same. He was super claustrophobic. I think one of my brothers is also similar.
So like say you get into a lift or something.
Yeah,
does that make
confined spaces.
Really?
A lift is like not so bad, but if it like as I said, it's getting worse with age. So now if I do get in a lift, like a packed lift with heaps of people, I do notice it. But because I have a lot of tools and I'm very self-aware, I'm able to just zoom out and be like, wow, look at my body, like feeling so anxious right now. Wow, there's like, and I'm able to just kind of witness it happening in real time, which is great because that gives me some distance from it. But lately, if I get on a really packed airplane, like I flew Sri Lankan Airlines, and that flight, there's just one flight a day back and forth from Melbourne to Colombo, and it is always jam-packed. And if I've learnt now, because this was my 5th return to Sri Lanka, so I've learnt now that I always book my seat. And I always sit in the same seat. But if I, in previous...
on every plane?
When I fly to Sri Lanka, I always book the same seat.
Is that a bit of a ritual omen type of a thing? Or?
Nah, it's a comfort thing. It's like, because it's always sort of on the flying home, it's always like overnight, and flying there, same thing. It's a 10 p.m. or 11 p.m. at night. So I always want the window seat at the front, so I'm the first off the plane, because also going through customs or immigration in Sri Lanka, if you get caught at the back of that line because you're last off the plane, like no Sri Lankans are in a hurry.
Yeah.
They've
figured it out.
Which is the most beautiful thing about the Sri Lankan culture, is that you do, and I guess this is the same with like many Asian countries, but you're on their time, right? Like my Western rigid scheduled mind is like has no place there. So I like to be first off the plane like as quickly as possible. Anyway. And I always pick that seat because it's window seat, and I can like cozy up in the corner and no one bothers me.
Can I ask a question just about travel? This might be a little bit of a divert here, but do you have like travel tips? Like what do you take with you on a plane to make it as comfortable as possible when you're sleeping and traveling overnight?
100%. Yeah. I always take my own eye mask. I take like a little silk. I feel like these are not out of the box, by the way. I always take a pair of noise cancelling headphones, but I don't sleep with those on, but I try to have them on for as much as possible, because when you drown out the background noise of the airplane, I find it to be less exhausting. And then I always take a pair of earplugs. So I sleep with earplugs in. And then the other thing I do is I always wear a hoodie that I can take the hood and put it all the way over my head to cover the top half of my face, even with my eye mask. I find that the staff are less likely to disturb you if you've got your hoodie all the way over, like the airline staff. And I don't love eating on an airplane. I try to like do my best to fast. That's kind of like a very Ayurvedic thing, to not eat when your feet are not on the ground. So I prefer to like not be disturbed. I mean, sometimes I will eat on, it's not like a hard and fast rule, but I don't like to be disturbed, especially if I'm trying to sleep.
Especially in that overnight red eye
I'm like,
flight.
I need this.
Yeah.
And then I do like to take like a neck pillow, but I hate carrying it around. I hate that you need it for 10 hours for like a 1 month trip. I'm like, it's not worth it. So I didn't do that this time.
I have ended up with so many of those neck pillows because I am the same. I get to when we flew back from Bali recently, it was the same, that awful flight overnight, red eye. Of course, you end up going and I'm like, I've got 3 or 4 neck pillows just in the cupboard now because I always forget it on the way there.
Yeah.
And on the way back, any red eye, I'm like, fuck, I need this.
And you like buy
pillow.
a new one at the airport and it costs you like $700.
Literally. I always take a sarong. I always find have the sarong same.
Yeah.
And for that same reason, I just want my head. And just the breathing on a plane as well, like trying to limit that. Just especially if it's a long haul flight and all the gases and the farts and the food smells. It is ming. So
on the flight on the way there, actually, I got up to go to the bathroom. We were like close to landing, and I must have just woken up, and the smell hit me for the first time, and I was like, "This is dank." Yeah. And I actually,
no wonder people get so sick.
Honestly, and then I noticed that one of the airline staff also noticed, and she had these 2 aerosol cans, and she walked up and down the aisle spraying what I imagine was deodorizer. And I was
which
like,
is also not great.
Yeah, but like I was like, thank you, firstly. I appreciate that. But secondly, like that's fucked that you have to do that. Like, what is this? Anyway,
we digress.
We do digress. Yeah.
I think you are just a little bit insane. Just for booking in 7 clients. Like, well done to you. And that's again like kind of the thing that has to happen in the industry, in the space that you work in. Like you kind of have no choice, right? Like you've got a bit of an obligation to your clients. You've missed a solid almost couple of weeks of not being able to practice. So it's like, obviously you've got this urge to have to be straight back into it to make sure you're servicing your clients. But
especially because like your one job as a therapist is to be consistent, because really the idea of therapy is that people end up needing therapy because their life has been inconsistent in some way. The people in it have been inconsistent or their circumstances. And so like the beauty of therapy is that you have this one consistent person, which is your therapist, that are stable and present and, available. And that becomes very hard when you're someone like me who does a million things and actually life is very inconsistent. And
you'd feel guilt, right?
Yeah, so like sometimes. And then also the other side of that is like the business side, in which like if I was to give myself that extra day, I shoot myself in the foot, because then the following week, and I'm the kind of person who, if I know I'm going to have to do something hard, I want to do it immediately and then relieve the pressure for the future. If someone... I've got this weird thing. I feel like we're very opposite in this.
We are, because you saying that, I'm like, I avoid hard things like the plague.
Yeah, but I'm like, if someone tells me to do something, if someone asks me to do something, I will do that thing as quick as humanly possible so that I can remove it from my mind and out of my life. I do not want that thing living in the background of my psyche or my to-do list as something that I'll know that I have to get to eventually. If it's something that I can just do immediately, do it now, done, never think about it again.
We are so different.
That is
like
my strategy. And so that sort of applies in this case. It's like, okay, I get back on a Tuesday, which I don't see clients on a Tuesday. And I did this like a little bit strategically, obviously not expect my flight to be so delayed. And it could have been worse, of course. But yeah, I just thought I'd rather have a big day on Wednesday, big day on Thursday, knowing that we're also coming into a long weekend as well, because we're recording this the Friday before the Melbourne Cup long weekend as well. So I just figure, you know what, get it done. But I fucking pay for it.
Yeah, you do.
I pay for it, doll.
100%. And that's the thing. It's like, can we be both healthy and well whilst trying to strive and be successful? Yeah. And that's a prime example.
But also, I mean, not that Sri Lanka was a holiday, although I shouldn't say that, because obviously it was so nice. And I did have 2 days to myself on the end, but I did feel refreshed coming back, like into therapy mode. I was a little bit like, whoa, how do you do this again? But I just certainly noticed a difference. It really reiterated the importance actually of having that time off. But I do take a lot of time off, not necessarily for holidays, but just because other work things. And anyway. Yeah.
Sri Lanka, while we're on the topic of it, and there's so many things that I want to ask you about this, because I mean, obviously I've known you for 4 or so years now, and you've been going on this retreat, and I've been watching it evolve every time, and I just think it's so beautiful, so fascinating, and every time I'm like, fuck, I really want to come next time, which I think I am going to make a concerted effort to.
You said that last year.
Yeah, but then time goes so quickly. Yeah. But I want to know, because I don't think I do know this, or maybe we've talked about it before, but I think it's super interesting for everyone anyway, but like, why Sri Lanka? Where did your relationship with Sri Lanka start? How did you start a retreat overseas? Like, how did you make this work and make it work so beautifully, so successfully? Like, the place that you stay in looks like absolute pure bliss, heaven on earth. Like that house, is it the house?
Yeah,
where
like
you practice at as well?
Yeah, it's amazing.
How did that all come about? And then I think maybe you posted something on your Instagram about surfing, and I love that your retreat encompasses it's the surfing component, but the yoga component, and what is the day to day of the retreat? Wow, so many things.
So many things. So okay, from the top. So let's just talk about Sri Lanka. So the first time I visited Sri Lanka would have been in maybe 2013 or 12 even, I can't remember, when I did like a 4-month trip around India, and then we stopped in on Sri Lanka for, I think it was a month or just shy of a month on the way home. So I was in my early 20s, and I loved it there, because after being in India, for anyone who's been to India, you'll know how absolutely chaotic it is. So to come from India to Sri Lanka, it's still such a beautiful place, but it just, without the intenseness and the hecticness and always having to look over your shoulder and always being kind of fearful of your life in some instances. So I loved it then. Anyway, that was many, many, many years ago. But in 2019, it must have been somewhere in the beginning half of 2019, I received a random email in my inbox from a business called Sunshine Stories asking if I was still interested in the yoga teaching position that I had applied for. And I got this email and I was like, fuck, did I apply for a yoga teaching position? And Sunshine Stories is based in Sri Lanka, in case that wasn't obvious. And then I really thought about it and I was like, yeah, I did, actually. I went through this phase where I recognized that for the first time in ages, I could take my skills anywhere. And actually the context was when I was working in advertising before I decided I wasn't going to pursue that, I was looking about moving internationally to like a European office like Amsterdam or something because the company I worked for was worldwide. So I thought I could go and do like a secondment.
Sick. Yeah.
And I loved the idea of that. But then I decided that I wasn't going to pursue advertising and I found yoga and etc. But then I just had this sort of feeling and I was like, oh, I could go and do this anywhere. And I think, and it's pretty vague, and I think that this was even back in I think it could have been nearly a year or at least 6 months before that this would have happened. So it wasn't top of mind. So when I got this email, I was like, fuck, yeah, I think I did submit like a few random things in Bali and I must have done one in Sri Lanka and who knows. Anyway, so got this email. Still interested in the job? And I was like, well, not really, to be honest. No. And at that time I was working pretty heavily on a business idea that my dad was helping me with. And I thought about it. And I was with Guy at this point as well. And the contract was a minimum 3 months to 6 months. And so I was like, fuck, what if I just went for 3 months? Like, what would Guy think? Would that be fine? Like, you know, he couldn't have come at that point because of his work. Anyway, I was like really nervous to talk to my dad about it because he'd been putting so much energy into helping me with this thing. And I sort of was, in fact, have I spoken about this before?
You've told me this.
Yeah. But have I said this on the podcast before? I'm having a bit of a deja vu.
I don't
anyway,
think
sorry
so.
if this is repetitive to
No,
anyone.
I don't think you have.
But anyway, I decided that it would be a sick experience and that I'd be crazy not to. So Sunshine Stories is a surf and yoga retreat in Sri Lanka, in the south of Sri Lanka, which is where I had been many years before. And the position was the yoga teaching position, and it was like a small salary, like very small salary, but a paid job nonetheless. And I was pretty chuffed with that. So I kind of built up the courage, and I remember sitting on the couch with my dad and just being like, hey, you know, can I talk to you about something? This really random opportunity's come up in Sri Lanka, and like I know that you've been helping me with this business, but I just wonder like what you think. Like, do you think that would be a bad idea? Or, you know, because dad was kind of like my guiding voice, my mentor really. And he surprised me by straight away saying 100%, you have to do that. That sounds amazing. And his perspective was that his one regret in life was not traveling more. Like he never really, I
have full on goosebumps.
Yeah,
I love that.
And I can as I talk about this now, I'm with him on the couch. I know exactly where we were sitting, and he was like,
His name's Rod, wasn't it?
Ronnie.
Oh,
And
love you, Ron.
And yeah, he didn't do much backpacking, and he was very kind of business focused, and so his thing was like, in the grand scheme of things, if you go for a couple of months, like what's the difference in the long term on this business that you're potentially going to start? Like what's the difference? It's not going to be less successful because you start it 6 months later. Like it's fine.
Great life message, I think, especially for you in your younger, like in your 20s at that point.
Yeah, so I would have been 26.
Right.
No, or maybe 27 actually.
Yeah.
I would have been 27. I can't remember. Anyway, so I accepted the job, and I think I settled in the middle. I think I was like, 6 months away from Guy, that's a pretty long time. 3 months doesn't feel long enough. So I think I settled on 4 months. I was like, I'll come for 4 months. And they were stoked with that, the employers. Anyway, so Guy and I also had a holiday booked to Japan, and I think I've spoken about this on the podcast already, but while we were in Japan was when my dad passed away suddenly in a car accident. And the plan was actually to I was coming back from Japan, and I think I had 2 days in between to unpack and repack, and then I was flying to Sri Lanka. And so obviously we're in Japan, we're on this small island, Naoshima, and getting off that island was incredibly traumatic and difficult, and we had to actually stay an extra night there because there was only one ferry a day, and we'd missed the ferry by the time we'd found out the news, and it was awful, awful. Anyway, we finally managed to get our way back to Tokyo, went home, and I was sitting on the aeroplane about to take off in Tokyo, and I the first thing I did was emailed Petter and Lynn, who own Sunshine Stories, a Swedish couple, and explained what had happened. And I said, look, I'm meant to be there next week. I know that, and I'm really sorry, but I'm not coming. And I was going to say I was devastated. I wasn't. Obviously, I was devastated about other things. So it was what it was. And I just got home to my family and spent, maybe like a month on the farm with my mum and my brothers, and just kind of navigated that really awful period. And it was my mum, or maybe my brothers, or maybe all of them at once, I'm not sure, who sort of broached the topic with me, and they were like, what are you going to do about Sri Lanka? And I was like, well, I'm not going. Like, I'm not leaving you guys. I can't go. And I feel emotional talking about it.
I'm like, got tears in my eyes.
Yeah, they very firmly, and my mum specifically, just really reminded me that, what would Dad say to this situation, that he wanted me to go, and he would still very much want me to go. And I sort of thought about that for a little bit, and honestly, the thought of leaving my family, I couldn't. That felt too painful. That felt too risky. It felt the thought of getting on another airplane. Like I really struggled with the idea of that. But the more I thought about it, the more I recognized that, I am alive, and what a blessing it is to be alive, and I should go and live my life. So I emailed Petter again and said, thinking about maybe coming, and he said, we've actually been holding the position for you, and it's here for you whenever you're ready. And I can't remember what the exact timeline was.
I've literally so many goosebumps listening to you tell this story.
So my dad died in June, 2 days before his birthday in June, and I left at the beginning of August. So maybe 6 weeks or something. And I went over there and just obviously had no idea what to expect. I was like, what am I doing? I negotiated with Guy as well that he would come. So also an important component is that I said that I couldn't come for 4 months. That felt too scary. So I said I would come for 3 instead. I negotiated with Guy that he would come for the middle portion and visit. And I also negotiated that my mum and one of my brothers would come and visit as well, just to kind of give me that touch point of family connection.
And when you say negotiated, do you mean
with them. I was like, Guy, if I'm going, you're coming at this time. And Mum, if I'm going, you're coming at this time. No, that was no problem for Sunshine Stories. They were so beautiful about the whole thing. And I was so lucky because when I got there, so I was the yoga teacher, and the way that the business runs is it's a retreat center, and every Sunday a new set of guests will rock up. So it's all year round, every Sunday new guests come. So, and they're there for a week from Sunday to Sunday. But there's also a manager and a social host, and her name was Adri, the manager at the time. And she had also lost her dad when she was quite a lot younger, but she and I just got on so well, and she was just like such a stable, nurturing force. And of course, Petter and Lynn as well were just so kind and so kind of compassionate. And anyway, this is probably turning into a very long story.
No,
but
let's keep the story going. Don't rush it. It's a beautiful story.
Yeah, so the way that life looked there was, as I said, Sunday to Sunday retreats, and I would be teaching yoga twice a day, and I would have Wednesdays off. So I would teach a yoga class from 6 a.m. until 7 a.m.-ish, and then we'd have breakfast, and then we would go out for a surf lesson. So it was predominantly a surf retreat where the tuk-tuk drivers would actually film you surfing, and then when you get back in, the surf coaches would go over your footage with you, with all of the guests, and tell you, so that you improve your surfing. So I had surfed a little bit, but I certainly was not a good surfer. So that was incredible for me. That's where I really learnt properly how to surf, because I was doing that at least once, if not twice per day. And so it was me, Adri, and the 2 surf coaches, Kavi and Varuna. And so we were just kind of the team. And in the beginning, I was like so nervous. I was like, what am I doing? I don't know these people. But all of us just got on so well, and just spending that time in the ocean in the mornings, and then we'd come back, have lunch. I'd teach an afternoon yoga class, I think from maybe 4 till 5 or something similar, and then we'd have dinner, and then there would be kind of other sporadic activities that we would take the guests on throughout the week. But just having that time to completely remove myself from my everyday life and from all of the grief and all of the massive change that was happening at home, and just to put myself in a completely new space where I actually didn't know anyone and no one knew me, and I wasn't constantly confronted with the, oh my God, I'm so sorry, are you okay? And, you know, and which all of that stuff was beautiful, and I needed that from my friends and family, but it just was a really refreshing, I just didn't have to be grieving all of the time. But then on the contrary, it was really hard because I was grieving all of the time, and I would have these really weird conflicting moments where honestly, like I would feel like the happiest I had ever felt. Like I would be in the water just with these new people in this new culture, and just feel with this new hobby as well, and just feel like, how did I get so lucky? But then, and I'm sure that other people who have experienced grief acknowledge this as well, that when you've lost someone really important to you, that those moments of happiness are by default accompanied by sadness with not being able to share it with the person that you've lost. And so, yeah, I grappled with that a lot, just like the conflict of feeling so happy and so sad at the same time. But to have developed a relationship with surfing that gave me so much and still continues to give me so much. Like the ocean was always my place, but now I have this whole new relationship with it because surfing, has given me that. And I on
And
top
your
of
dad, he just would have been so there with you too,
Yeah.
just to talk about those moments too, because it's like, you know, in those moments of grief, you know, where you're feeling so happy but then feeling so guilty because you're so happy, but that's how they want you to feel.
Yeah.
And it's in those moments where you've got to consciously remind yourself, oh, actually, he's here.
Yeah.
He is the ocean.
Yeah.
I'm with him always.
Yeah. And at my dad's not the memorial service, but like the funeral service. I'm not sure.
The
what you call
wake?
it. Not the wake. No, at like when we were actually at the place. Anyway, there was this moment where we were sort of saying goodbye for the final time, like just before it was just family and immediate family, just before he was being kind of wheeled away, and we put this song on, one of his favorite songs, and just in that moment, we were in this like beautiful room in the Springvale Cemetery and overlooking this lake with this fountain. And just in that moment, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this rainbow like appeared in the fountain. Like it was like the spray off from the fountain all of a sudden became vibrant with this rainbow. And we were all like, oh my gosh. And I was like, I just was like, whoa, what is happening? Like, and to me, I was like, there he is. Like, he's right there. Like, yeah. And so now whenever I see a rainbow like that, that's my sign of him being present. And the amount of times that I would be in the surf in Sri Lanka and then just all of a sudden there would be a rainbow, whether it was in the sky or whether it was in the spray off of the wave or something else, where, you know, on those days, because I was also there during sort of a portion of wet season, so it was like raining a lot, and you know how sometimes when it's misty rain and you can see like the rainbow, like the amount of times that I connected with those moments just really reiterated his presence and his pride.
And you being there was exactly where you were supposed to be. Making that decision was, and look what it's opened you up to now with the way that the retreat has continued to grow. That's so beautiful.
So, so I think, is there anything else? I think that sort of summarizes my relationship to Sri Lanka. But by the time I came home, sort of end of October-ish in 2019, because also this kind of coalesces with the decision to study psychotherapy, which I know I've told that story already with like the butterflies, and it was the kind of the one thing that I didn't get to talk to Dad about. And actually the reason for that was because I just asked him about Sri Lanka. I didn't want to then also say, and by the way, I'm thinking about like studying this degree. You know, I didn't want to like go too hard at once because I was like nervous about what he would say. Anyway, so I kind of came home. And then to 2020, I ended up studying. Of course, we went into lockdown, and then we had a couple of years of that whole situation. But I always sort of had in the back of my mind that I would be going back to Sri Lanka as much as humanly possible, because I loved it there so much. I'd made so many great friends, local friends, but also, other friends who were living there doing similar things to me. And while I was there, there was this one woman, Jane, who would cover my yoga classes sometimes if I was like doing something or going somewhere. And she was telling me that she was in the process of opening this business in Sri Lanka and building and renovating this place that they were going to be hosting yoga retreats and yoga trainings at. And so we were kind of edging more towards the back end of COVID, and she just I'd been following along and she was in my mind, and I just thought I'm going to reach out to her and just see where they're at with the build and if it's finished and if they're open yet. And anyway, they were, and so they sent me all of the information and long story short, that's the place where I host the retreat now. And for anyone who follows me on socials, you'll see it and you've seen how absolutely incredible it is. It's on Kogala Lake, so it overlooks this incredible lake. It's only 10 minutes from the beach, but it's like up in the jungle and you're just surrounded by nature and animals, and it's just the most incredible place on earth. So I think this was the third retreat, and it's 2024, so 23, 22. So 2022 was the first year that I decided to host my own retreat there. I also felt, because I'd been working at Sunshine Stories, I really had a feel for how to do things and how to make it epic. I knew all of the places I wanted to take the guests. I could speak a little bit of Sinhalese. I had a lot of great contacts, and I just was this makes so much sense to just be able to recreate this retreat but in my own way and make it more yoga focused versus surf. So Sunshine Stories was more surf, but my retreat's definitely more yoga, but with the option of surf for those who want it. So but then 2022, there was sort of a lot of big political things happening in the country, and actually right up until a couple of weeks beforehand, we weren't sure if we were going to be able to go ahead because the Australian government had raised the travel warning to do not travel. And I think your travel insurance potentially becomes void if you decide to ignore the government warnings. Anyway, it was 2 weeks before the retreat and they lowered it back down again. I was like, thank the Lord.
Thanks, Ron.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks, Daddy. So anyway, 3 years in now, this was the third year back at the same place, and I just feel like it's gotten better and better every year because I've been able to refine the offering and for me it feels like such a selfish offering because I get to go there to the place that I love so much, and I get to see all of my friends, and I visit Sunshine Stories every year, and and I just get to live out my own happy place, but I also get to share it with other people, which is the most special part, being able to take other people to a country that's a little less familiar, right? Everyone goes to Bali, but not as many people are familiar with Sri Lanka. And I think that creates a bit of hesitation in others as well. So, other people trust me to take them because they know that I've been there and they know that I'm familiar with it. And so to be able to, I guess, share the experience that I had that was so profound for me at such a pivotal point in my life. It's such a privilege. It's a selfish privilege because I go there for my own reasons as well. But it's just, honestly, the last week was incredible. I just had the best time, and the guests had the best time, and it was amazing.
You've looked like you've come back glowing, and it truly looks like magical. That place that you stayed, taking everyone surfing, the connection, just seeing, you did such an amazing job this time round because I've obviously been watching over the last few years of really capturing the moments. Mm-hmm. And I was every day waiting for your next reel to come because I was what have they been up to today? Having major FOMO that I wasn't there. But you can see that each time, like you said, you've been able to refine it because you learn more and more, but it just looked like such an elevated experience this time around. And well done you. Yeah. And I love the connection. Firstly, thank you for sharing that story with us. Obviously it evokes a lot of emotion in you, and for good reason, but so beautiful that you get to get back to this place that's really ultimately helped you to heal as well. And there's so much in that. I think just the taking of risk as well, and I actually had this this quote in my mind this morning when I was in the shower, and it was no risk, no reward. That's what I kept reminding myself because I was reflecting on some of the things over the last sort of 6 weeks that have been work-wise, and just in the shower I was having these moments for myself just thinking, oh wow, reflective, I've done this, I'm actually really proud. And I was thinking back to, wow, if I had not have taken that risk back then, the doors to these opportunities that I have now would not be open. Yeah. And so I really think that's such a huge thing that's happened for you with this retreat. No risk, no reward, right? you've made this decision that was probably maybe not that aligned with where you were at that time with deciding about your career in, you know, that more corporate kind of creative space or agency space, I should say. And you just went with it. And
yeah, because I often think if I had not had the courage to go and do and leave my family and go and do that, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have this place that was so incredible. I wouldn't and I wouldn't be surfing. Well, maybe I would. I don't know, but not to the level I am now. Like it's like sliding doors almost. And I think we were going to do an episode on this. Remember, like the butterfly effect?
Yes.
Because there was this TikTok trend that was like, "What's your butterfly effect?" Which is like the one thing that happens that then triggers all of the other things that takes you down this very specific road. And that is exactly it. No risk, no reward. If I hadn't have had the courage to just go and do that thing that at 27 years old, culturally, like sort of societally was probably deemed as like, you know, not following the timeline of society. You know, I should start this business and start to make more money and blah, 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 blah. Boring. But instead I was like, no, I'm going to go to Sri Lanka for a couple of months. I'm not going to wear shoes and I'm going to...
For not much of a wage, as you said, not much of a salary too, which is a huge thing to mentally kind of grapple with.
Definitely. It was like enough to break even, but I was spending what I was making sort of thing. But yeah, it was like I didn't end up being there for quite 4 months, but it was supposed to be 4 months of just actually living and just going for the experience, which was... You know, my dad, who was a very successful man in his 60s at the time, was like, yeah, I wish that I had more experience. Like, fuck the business, just go and just go. So
yes to that.
But I was also going to say for anyone, because you were mentioning like the reels and the content, and we'll definitely talk about that. I've had so many messages from people being like, how did you how did you put all this together? But for anyone who wants to go, you can go onto my Instagram, and I saved a Sri Lanka highlight. On my highlights with all of the like daily playlists and the daily themes and the daily reels there as well. So if you want to go and like binge some Sri Lanka content and make yourself wish that you were there, then you can go and do that.
I think that we should do a Sri Lanka rushing slowly retreat. Just putting it out there. Anyone listening who might be interested in that, just let us know, because if there's interest and appetite, who knows? Maybe we might start doing some rushing slowly retreats.
Careful what you guys wish for. Oh my God, that would be the dream. Yeah. So
thank you for sharing that though, Zoe.
My pleasure.
Gosh, talking about our dads and grief. I feel like we've been saving this conversation because it's so big for both of us. Like, I think we've both sprinkled little bits of conversation about our dads in some of the conversations that we've had on this pod, but I think that it is definitely something that we'll get to, the conversation of grief and you know, you're talking about being in the ocean. I resonate with that so much, because for me during that period, like even still to this day, the ocean is somewhere for me where I just feel so at peace. And when you're going through tough times like that, having these, you find these things, right, that just help you to heal. And I just think that there's so much value in when we're ready to have that conversation, because it's obviously a big one and a heavy one. It'd be nice to share.
Yeah, and I think we'll... spoiler alert, but we'll tie it up in like grief and legacy. We've spoken about the importance of legacy and what you leave behind. So we will tackle that. The other thing, and again, we'll probably talk about this in more detail later, but like my yoga practice during that time, like I say this often, I might have said it on the podcast before, but I actually feel like every single decision that I had made in my entire life, including engaging with the practice of yoga, was actually preparing me for that moment of losing my dad. And my perspective on life, my spiritual practice, my regulatory skills were so fundamental in my ability to cope with that loss. You know, and I just want to add that in, right? Because it's not like I just went to Sri Lanka and everything was fine. Like I had lots of tools and a lot of support and a lot of moments where I actually wasn't fine, you know, keeping in mind there are a lot of tuk-tuk rides where I was bawling my eyes out.
And still to this day, like you're never fine, you know, like, you just get better at getting comfortable with it.
Exactly. Okay, the other portion of your question, and again, this is like what so many people have been asking me, but around like the actual retreat, like
Day to day.
Yeah, because it's sort of interesting. Like, obviously, it is the most like I pinch myself over and over again. Like, how am I calling this work? Like, how is this work? And like it's incredible, but it is a lot. So it was 6 nights and 7 days. 17 people, so 17 including me, so 16 others.
Is that the biggest that you've had so far?
Yeah, it was the biggest. Yeah. I think the previous years was maybe like 14 and the year before that was maybe 12. So that's a lot. Firstly, like the responsibility of that, I really felt. I'm like, okay, I am bringing 16 people over to this country, many of whom have never been here before, and that's like responsibility. Not only to provide a great experience, but to keep everyone safe and really well informed and communicate effectively and all of those kinds of things, to the best of my ability, of course. So yeah, there was less anxiety this year, actually. I learnt from previous years, especially when I didn't know a lot of the guests coming along, I'd be really nervous about the cohesion of the group and a bit like, fuck, what if they don't gel well, like, oh my goodness. But the last couple of years taught me that it's always the perfect group of people. It's just the way the universe works. And this year was no exception. It was incredible.
What was the split of people you knew versus you didn't?
This year I knew pretty much everyone apart from two guests, but they were like friends of friends, people that I did know. Whereas on previous years there was like people who I'd just never ever had no context for. Yeah, and there was a mixture of age as well. So there was like a couple of women who were a bit older. There was a mother and daughter. There was a couple of women in their sort of late 50s, early 60s, and then a bunch in their kind of 20s and 30s. So it was like a real mix of people, which again in previous years might have actually given me a bit of anxiety, but what experience has taught me is that actually the mix is great. It's the best bit. It's having like really different perspectives and life experiences and kind of coming together, and especially having a couple of older women there being able to, share their wisdom and life experience that's very different to someone in their 20s, for example. So that was, it's always really, really beautiful. But yeah, the structure of the actual retreat is that we practice yoga twice a day. So yoga starts at about 7 a.m. We do a two-hour practice. Then we have breakfast, and then we do like a surf lesson on the first day. Everyone does a lesson, and then for people who want to keep surfing, they can go at that time every day. And then we'll have lunch, and then we'll practice yoga again in the afternoon, whether it's like yoga or yin or breath work or workshops. We did like a lot of journaling workshops and some kind of spoke a lot about mental health and psychology and a whole bunch of things. And then dinner, and then usually we go to bed after that. And sprinkled inside of that, we usually would have one additional activity planned every day. So I put the schedule together before, and as I said, because it's a couple of years in now, I know exactly what I like to do and how to change things, and the venue helps with that as well, helping to coordinate certain things. And I did have a team of people helping me, so I always bring an assistant along. So this year, my assistant came back for actually the 3rd year. So I met her. Her name's Loretta. Shout out. Fucking love you so much. We had never met before, and she booked into the retreat on the first year and came as a guest. And then last year, she came back again just to kind of help out with a few little things. And that made me realize that I really need a proper assistant, especially with the bigger group this year. So I brought her back as an official sort of assistant. And she is God's gift to this world, because without her, like honestly, because just even like this is so trivial, but like coordinating tuk-tuks. So for anyone who wants to go and do extra activities or whatever, we need to order transportation for them to come to the venue because it's a little bit in the jungle. And just like that job in itself is a fuck around. And she just did everything. She was just amazing, and she's highly organized and has the best memory. And not only was she managing the guests, but she was managing me. So she would be like, have you got this? Have you done that? Have you been to the bathroom? Have you had something to eat? Where's the coffee? Like, she was just all over it. Have you posted on your stories yet? Have you shared the playlist? Let me go and ask Ash, the photographer, for the photo that you can put in the background so that you can share your playlist and it's just
epic.
Done. Like, all of that kind of stuff she was just on top of, and honestly I could not.
You could see it, actually. I was shook. Yeah. I'm like, how is this chick doing this?
Yeah.
Like thinking.
I wasn't.
Yeah. Well, that's it. But it's like like you explaining it, that's what I was thinking. I'm like, knowing how many people you had over there and how many activities you were doing and what people kind of want to explore on their own when they're overseas.
Yeah.
Like just,
and
it's a lot of work. And I was like, but then every day you're fucking giving people the playlist, you're doing Instagram posts. I'm like, how?
Yeah. And this group was really active as well compared to other years. This group like was really wanted to get out and about all the time. And also I should mention it actually rained for the first 3 full days. It did not stop raining. And I was like, oh my God, what if it doesn't stop? This is a disaster. But we just like actually embodied that as a part of the practice of yoga. And like, what if we just weren't to resist the rain? Like, what if we just acknowledge that actually like we are nature and nature rains and we rain too sometimes. And so like, it's just, you know, and that was helpful. And then of course the sun came out. So phew, relief. But yeah, this group, and I think maybe because of the rain, they were very active. They wanted to get out and about and do heaps of things. And so there was just a lot. There was a lot going on. Poor Loretta, she just did such a good job. But yeah, so
is Loretta from Melbourne?
Yeah, she is. Yeah.
Cool.
And so I also had Loretta, but then also Ash as well. So you
love
met
you,
Ash before.
Ash.
Yeah, we love you, Ash. Ash came as my photographer. So Ash actually came on the retreat last year as my photographer. I'd never met her before, but she was a mutual friend of someone who put us in touch. And she came along. Anyway, for this year, I was like, oh, I need to find a photographer again, just making the assumption that she wouldn't want to come back. I don't know why, for no reason other than, you know, she's done that. She's ticked that box. She probably, I don't know, doesn't want to. Anyway, so I messaged her and was like, hey, babe, I'm just looking for a photographer for the retreat. Do you know anyone? And in her mind, she was thinking, oh my God, she doesn't want me to come back. Like she thought I did a bad job. And then she was like,
mind you, she's literally one of the best photographers I've ever.
She's like amazing. And then she was like, oh, this is all on DMs. She was like, oh, well, like I'd come back, but only if you want me. Like I can also give you a list of other people. And I was like, oh my God, you'd come back? Oh my God, amazing. Okay, done. Great. Sorted. And then we chatted about it after and she was like, I was so anxious because you hadn't messaged me yet. And so I just assumed, like before I'd messaged her asking if she knew anyone, she was wondering if I was going to message. And the fact that I hadn't, she was like, oh, she didn't like my photos. She doesn't want me to come back. Anyway, I was like, no, I just assumed that you would have like not wanted to. I don't know. Because it's not a paid position as well.
How
like
funny
we do a
is
contract.
assuming, right?
Never assume it makes an ass of you and me.
Yes.
Have you heard that before?
Oh, no, I haven't, but I like it. Is there
ASSUME?
okay, got you. Go ahead, Roger.
Wow, that was so lame that I said that out loud. Okay, moving on. Anyway, so Ash was a very crucial part of the team. So the three of us just had like a WhatsApp group and they were, but like Ash was also incredible at just helping out with little bits here and there. She was all over the content. She did such a good job. And really my main intention for having Ash on the retreat, I should name, yes, it's for content and all that stuff. That's important, but it's so that I can give the guests a folder of all of their images and videos from the experience. Like it's that's why I do it, because also at Sunshine Stories, that's what we had. You'd have a photographer there, not all the time, but for a couple of the surf trips and stuff. And then all of the guests get a link to their photos from the retreat, which is incredible.
It's honestly such an invaluable, because I think that's also one thing, just going back to grief, just to learning, like, one of the things is I look back and I think, fucking wish I had more photos of my dad.
Yeah.
I wish I had so many more photos. And I lost, there's another story for another time, but I lost my phone after he died not long after he died. And it had like 3 years of like everything. I didn't lose it. It got stolen. And so I lost all of that. And the importance of, for me anyway, I don't know, I think a lot of people, but I love being able to look back on photos. It's so important, and you don't realize how important it is until you don't have a person there to continue making memories with. And so, and when you're in an environment like that on a retreat, I mean, the last thing you're probably wanting to do is get your phone out all the time. So great that you've done that.
With iPhone photos, right? Like, because we all have cameras on us all the time now, you're always taking a bunch of photos and like they're usually like kind of shit. And so to have a professional photographer there with a good camera taking really nice photos in this incredible environment, for me, I'm like, that is so beautiful. Like my photos of myself learning to surf at Sunshine Stories and like hanging out with the guests and like those memories I will cherish forever. So I really wanted to give that experience to other people. The content was sort of the secondary. And last year, we actually focused on more iPhone content because that's where the kind of the kind of trend of content was last year. It was very much lo-fi. iPhone footage was like doing really well on social platforms. And so we focused on Ash was taking photos for the guests, but then doing a lot of filming on her iPhone to put together reels and things. But I didn't have the foresight to actually I wanted to make content as I went last year, but I just wasn't on the front foot, so I didn't do it. So this year I thought, okay, how can I like just leverage off this experience and knowing there's so many people who want to be here who can't. I've got Ash here. She's incredible at what she does. How can we like put together a bit of a content strategy so that we can leverage off this for content and social media, but also to let people into the experience and give them the insights and the yogic teachings and the things that, you know, are the whole reason of the retreat, right? Like I bring people on a holiday, but I also want to share this very profound practice of yoga that for me has changed my life and allowed me to, you know, experience grief in a way that's, you know, that I'm okay. And so, yeah, I asked them, I was like, what do you guys think about trying to put together a daily reel? Like, do we reckon this is achievable? And they were like, yeah, let's do it. And I say we, Ash and Loretta. And so, yeah, the way that we would do that is that Ash would just do her thing and be filming and shooting throughout the week and throughout the different activities. And then in the mid-morning, someone would airdrop some content to my phone, which would then give me, and I'd take sort of 20 minutes to post the playlist and a little recap of the morning practice. And then after dinner, we would sit down for another maybe 10, 15 minutes. Ash would airdrop me a whole bunch of video. No, she wouldn't. Sorry. She would show me a lot of the video content. I would pick and choose the videos that I liked based on how I was going to kind of put together the reel and the theme of the day. And then she would sort of bang together a little bit of editing, send it to me. I would re-edit it on my phone to make it fit. And then I'd post it. And to be honest, you guys, it was hard. It was really hard. I don't know.
It takes time and effort, doesn't it? But fuck, it was good.
Yeah.
Literally, I was like waiting.
Yeah.
The next day, I was like, and now I'm like, I'm booking. I'm coming.
Yeah.
We're doing a retreat in Sri Lanka because it work. That's what it is, right? Content essentially equals marketing, and and you took us on that journey, and I'm so glad that you did. And I was using your playlist to take songs from my teaching breath work. Like,
I'm so
it was
glad
great. So you nailed it.
Well, but also like the internet connection is not incredible there as well. So the hardest part was that, you know, and keeping in mind, like, I'm talking like 7 full days of like not stopping. Like there is not 1 second just to pause and think about anything other than what's happening in the next 5 to 10 minutes, because there is just so much happening all the time and coordinating and always, because everything, you know, it's the same as Bali. Everything happens on WhatsApp or in DMs. So I'm like messaging the surf coaches, like to book in the lessons for the guests who want more lessons. And I'm like, there is just no spare time. And so I would get into bed and that would be my like, okay, what am I teaching tomorrow? So I'd like look through my notes, and I tried my best in the first. So I flew over with 4 days before the retreat started, and that was my planning time. I hadn't planned a single thing for this retreat until I actually touched down in Sri Lanka 4 days before. So I did all of my class planning, so it was all done. So I would just get into bed at night. I'd read through my notes. Okay, embody the theme of tomorrow. What are we doing? What are we talking about? Why is it important? Why would people care about this? Like the way that I plan my classes is the what, the why, and the how. So the what is, what are we doing? Okay, we might be focusing on the heart and on love. Why does it matter? Why does someone care to come to a 2-hour experience where we're going to talk about the heart or love? Like, why would a person care about this, right? And I'd write like a little statement. Well, when we're in our hearts, when we feel more open, like life feels more seamless. We're more open to experiences. We're more attractive to finding the things, you know, that kind of stuff. And then the how is like, okay, what are we actually doing in the 2-hour practice that's going to like really nail this message or this experience for people internally? So I'd read through that, and then I would be finally like, oh, okay, I should probably go to sleep. It's like 9:30 at night and I have to be up at like, 5:45 to do my own practice and then go. And I'd be like, fuck the reel. I got to do the reel. And so I'd lie in bed. It's like getting 10:15. I'm so tired. I'm like, oh, what song am I going to choose? There's the trending audio. Like, and then I'm like, oh, I haven't written the caption. Anyway, so that was fun. I'd get that done. I'm like pretty good at banging that out these days. But then the internet connection. So I would schedule, because the time difference, so I wouldn't want to schedule it, post it live in the moment because that would come out at a weird time. I wanted to go live at like 7 a.m. Melbourne time. So I'd schedule it. But because the internet was so slow, it might take 45 minutes to schedule. And I kept having this issue where it would be scheduling twice. And then if I didn't wait to then be able to cancel one of the schedules, it was going to go live twice. And so I'm up at 11 p.m. most nights waiting for it to tick over.
Oh, that's so annoying.
So annoying. I'm like, what am I doing, Zoe? Like, this is not important. Who cares? It's a reel. No one cares about your reel.
But that's like your perfectionism
I just couldn't not do it. And anyway, it just became the ritual. I just kind of lie in bed half asleep with my phone next to me waiting for it to upload. I'm like, for the amount of views I'm getting on this reel, who gives a shit? But anyway, I'm glad to hear that it was.
No, it was good.
nice
And
on your end.
I was definitely, waiting for the updates. I think it's just a nice way to bring people in. But far out, like social media is such a beast, isn't it? And I mean, even just with our socials, like
mate.
I admire your determination and work ethic. I'm such a like loosey-goosey planner of things, and it is like a full-time job doing
I'm like,
social
if I'm doing
media.
something hard, I'm getting it done. I'm doing it at 11 p.m. I'm not, because the thing is that if I decided to wait to post it the next day, there was just no time. I couldn't.
Yeah.
Especially with already having to post the playlist and the other things that I wanted to be
And that's
no
it.
time.
It's like you just either, when it comes to things like that, whether it's social media or whatever it is, it's like, it's just consistency, isn't it? Like you just have to, if you're making a commitment, you have to be consistent.
That is exactly right.
And that relates to life, like exercise, breathwork meditation practice, like your 30-day meditation practice. In order to, and that's why I have to often check myself when it comes to making a commitment, because I am not great at consistency. And that's due to my life. Like my life doesn't permit me consistency because of my schedule, the way that it is. And so I struggle with that, because when I do have to be consistent with something, for example, while you were away doing our Instagram for rushing slowly, because that's been your thing. You do like the real rushing slowly. The rushing slowly reel posts, and I do like the little fillers. So while you were away, I'm like, fuck.
And you did a great job, might
Thank
I
you.
add. I was very grateful for you stepping in. It's like the benefit of having two of us doing this,
Totally.
right? Like dividing and conquering, but sometimes it's a lot. Okay, I feel like we've spoken about me for ages. Are we done with this conversation? Can we move on?
I really enjoyed it though. Thank you.
Anyway, so enough about me. Obviously, you have been busy picking up the slack for rushing slowly while I've been away, but you've been doing heaps as well, because AFLW season is starting to wrap. Is that right? And also you've had this conference thing. So the day that I got back, Megzy was like offline for like 3 days, which was perfect, just from a timing perspective.
The two of us are just so funny, like how we operate and like how we manage to find time to talk to each other in amongst all this absolute chaos that is our lives.
You call me a psycho, but I think you're also a psycho. I don't like, you drove to Essendon this morning. Like,
I know, and I'm so like sticky because they use like
the
this
gel.
aloe vera gel.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's going to be great when I'm lying on the beach like a seal later. But anyway, yes, I have been pretty full on.
Yeah.
Like I said at the start, in my mind, I thought I was going to get through September, pretty much wrap things up with AFL sort of stuff. Yokkai's done, men's season's done, half of the women's season's done. Like, cool, get through September and I can breathe. And fuck, boy, was I wrong. If anything, it's kind of gotten a little bit busier. There are some, I do have a few more free days, but the prep for the events that I've had have been a lot bigger. So it's sort of balanced it out. So yeah, I've been kind of balls deep in MC work and MC prep over the last couple of weeks. I just came off the back of hosting my first ever conference, which was really cool, a 3-day conference, a tourism conference. So made some amazing connections. It was the Australian Indigenous Tourism Conference. So it was like all of these different Indigenous tourism businesses from around Australia came to Melbourne. The conference was at the MCG and I hosted the whole thing. So just like a whole lot of prep and a lot of humans in the room, and a lot of, it's like a big anxiety climb when you do a lot of prep and then you build this nervous energy up before you have to get up and present on stage with hundreds of eyes beaming at you. And because it's 3 days and there's so many speakers, so many moving parts, you're just constantly almost being super agile in the moment, because you just got to go into these things knowing that things are going to change and shift and move.
Who's managing you? Like, who's directing you and telling you what to do and where to go?
Yeah, so it's like the agency that was involved with organising the event. So we kind of buddied up and Thankfully, they had a printer there because my notes changed so much. So I'm just like, doing my notes. So again, no downtime. That's why you and I couldn't talk, because it's like you're just on the whole time.
And is someone giving you a script? Like, how do you navigate?
For this one, not really. No,
Wow.
you just get sent who the speakers are and what the topic is. So I'm like going on, finding their bios. Right, like you fully have to prep.
And you have to introduce each person by their bio. So you're essentially writing their bios.
Yeah, so I'm like going up on stage. I'm like, and it was pretty amazing. Like some of the speakers were incredible. And like even yesterday, Minister McCarthy, so lots of ministers, lots of delegates, lots of people, very like influential people in the room. But like introducing people like Minister McCarthy, who's the new Minister for Indigenous Australians. So like, you got lots of important people in the room, and so
AKA,
it's a
don't
lot
fuck
of
it up.
pressure. And there was a couple of panels that I wasn't fully aware that I had to host, and so a little bit thrust in the deep end, hosting panel conversations on topics that I'm not overly familiar with. Lucky I can talk shit. So I, just not talk shit, but I'm able to hold a conversation at least. But the main point of all of this is that, like, incredible experience. And that's what I was thinking about, going back to what we said before. I was just having all these thoughts when I was in the shower this morning about how grateful I am to have these experiences. And financially, like, these things are what are keeping me afloat at the moment. This is where like the big portion of my income's coming from, particularly because we're still, out of pocket for if we want to do projects like this, I have to work hard on these things.
Someone please sponsor us. What?
We are gladly taking sponsorship here at Rushing Slowly. Inquiries, please send them through. We don't even have an email address, do we? No. Just hit us up on Instagram or Facebook.
DM.
Yeah, actually not Facebook. I don't use Facebook at all
we're
anymore.
not on Facebook. We're not boomers.
TikTok? No, I'm working on that as well. But I was just thinking, no risk, no reward. That is my current saying at the moment. No risk, no reward, because thank fuck I took the risk to challenge myself in a whole new industry, because far out it's paying off now. Thank goodness we've taken the risk with this podcast and forking out, money from our own personal accounts to get it off the ground, but no risk, no reward. And the reward I know and I can feel is going to come with this. Yeah. So, it's been really nice to have come off the back of that, and, a big tick. First ever conference that I've emceed.
Can I ask, sorry to interrupt, did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I did. Of course I enjoyed it, but what is hard is I feel like I'm just on a bit of a come down now.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot of prep, and then I still get nervous as hell before I have to stand up on stage. So you're constantly in an anxious energy, and then, and then it's a lot of human interaction. So like hundreds of people, lots of talking constantly. You're always on, and you're always talking to someone new. A lot of networking, which again, all things that I love, but you just kind of have to come down that mountain, and it sometimes means that it's just a bit of a come down. So I think I'm just coming down from it today. But then like last week I emceed another event which just like fully lights my soul on fire, and it was I volunteer at a school on Friday mornings, the Melbourne Indigenous Transition School, MITS, and I just adore this school. It's housed out of the Richmond Football Club. So their Year 7 classroom is at the top, is like on the top level of the Swinburne Centre, so which is where like the, Richmond train out of and stuff. And so you're in the classroom, and, you're on some Fridays you're watching, the guys out training. They might have their captain's run or whatever before a game on the weekend. So that's such a special experience for these young Indigenous kids who a lot of them come from communities up north and communities in Victoria. And I just love it. And I go in there on most Fridays that I can, wherever I can, and just sit in the classroom and help them with like their homework, or some days it's electives and sometimes it's building Lego, and it's just the best. I love it, and I'm very entrenched in that environment now. I've been doing that for the last few years, and this year I've just emceed their gala for the third time. So now I've just and it's just a consistent thing. Like I got a text from one of the organisers and workers at MITS the other day who was like, you crushed it, Megzy. Thank you so much. Like we appreciate you, and make sure you bookmark the date for next year because you're on again. Like it's just like that's like my event now. It's like my key event, and I'm so proud of it and I love it. And we ended up raising $1.4 million.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah,
was there like a silent auction or something?
Yeah, it was like an auction. There's a thing where you bid and just donations.
Yeah, wow.
So the event is like this big gala, a lot of philanthropists, like a lot of people that, are involved with the school, but throughout the night. So to have raised $1.4 million. Amazing. And I really love this space. Like the MC environment for me feels so fitting because it's so people orientated, and I love networking, and it's like in these places it opens you up to the next, the next thing. And I find that that's what happens. Like this tourism conference, like I will be super surprised if more job opportunities don't come up off the back of it through the connections that you build. And that doesn't necessarily just stop at emceeing. I think that's why, that is just why I love people in general. And people is a big passion of mine because it's connection, but it's also just like I really love getting to know what people do and where they come from, and that's why I always try and give time to people wherever I can, because you just don't know what that could do to benefit you in the long run. And every opportunity that I've ever had has really come off the back of meeting people and connection and networking and relationship building. And so I'm really loving being involved in so many events and stuff at the moment. And then, just to recap with the AFLW, that this is my third season of doing boundary commentary for the AFL Women's for Fox Footy, which I feel like this year I've graduated into the driver's seat, not so much the passenger now. I kind of know my role, know what to do. I understand the flow of the game a lot better. I'm way more aware of who all of the players are now. I've built some really good relationships with a lot of the athletes, the players, and I love it. It's such a fun job. I mean, it takes up most of my weekends, so pretty much every weekend for the season, which is 11 rounds.
Is there prep for that as well, or do you?
Yeah. There's you got to know who's playing, and because with the women's it's like you have a lot of young talent, lots of new players. There's been a lot of player movement over the last couple of years, so sometimes that's been a bit challenging, is just knowing who's who and who's moved where and what their stories are, and that's where a lot of the prep comes from. But
do you have someone brief you on that, or is that self-directed? You
self-directed,
have to just sort that out.
So that's if before a game I'll go on, I'll read through their website, what's current in the news cycle, who's playing, who's been omitted, why. I would rather be way more prepared for those things because it's not my first language. Footy is not my first language. So, way prefer to just go above and beyond with the prep to ensure that if something does come up, at least I kind of have some background instead of being like, oh, fuck, I don't know the answer to this and feel like a dickhead. But I've really enjoyed that this season, but now that that's pretty much wrapped up, this is the final weekend. Well, as we record, this is the last weekend of the home and away season, and then we go into finals. And I may have a couple of games during the finals period, but ultimately that's kind of wrapped up now. So I'll get a lot of my weekends back, which is really nice.
Famous last words.
Just heard a little sneeze over in the corner there. It's been really good. I've been keeping busy. I'm so grateful for all the opportunities. A lot of all of the things that I'm doing still require a lot of prep because it's a lot of new territory for me. But I like the challenge, and every day is different. And I'm just really grateful for each door that continues to open off the back of challenging myself in these new spaces.
Because it's kind of like the butterfly effect that you don't know about yet. It's
yes.
like these, when you say yes to one gig that might feel a little bit outside of your comfort zone, but who knows about the doors that have already opened that you just don't know about yet.
And you know what I've been thinking, and this is like me manifesting a little bit as well, and now I'm just going to say it so the universe hears, but I recently did that remember I was away for 3 weeks and I went and did like that tourism. Oh, sorry.
Yes,
no,
yes,
it
yes.
wasn't tourism. It was like a bit of a travel series a bit. I went out to the country and it was a gig with VicGov enticing teachers to want to move regionally. But it felt a little bit like a travel series because, you know, we're walking around these different towns and getting the teachers to explain what reason they wanted to move there for. And so I felt like I was on the set of Getaway pretty much every week that I was away on this. So I was like, and I really loved that. Like I loved, again, challenging myself in a different presenting format. I've been so used to presenting footy over the last 4 years. So it was pretty cool to do presenting in a travel sort of manner. And then I'm like obviously doing this tourism conference. So I'm like, what comes next? There's obviously something brewing under the surface here. Just stir the cauldron.
A little bit of this, a little bit of that.
So again, if you're listening, Getaway or any travel show that would like to take me on, I'm an open book.
Or I thought you were going to say, so the universe, if you are listening up there. But yeah, I mean, just direct to Getaway, that's good too.
So yeah, really excited. I feel like I'm going into next year a little bit of the unknown because things have sort of changed with Yokai, the footy show that I've been involved with for the last 4 years. That's not going ahead at all. We did Yokai footy shorts this season and we've made the decision that it's not going ahead at all now. So that's like a little bit not concern. It's not concerning, but it's just a change. Like that's been my constant for the last 4 years and now I'm going into a new year and that doesn't exist. But I'm excited for the opportunity that lies around the corner with knowing that I'll get time and space back by not doing that. And the experience that I've gained over the last year particularly, I feel like this year I've really come out of my skin and I feel like I really belong in the spaces that I'm working in now. And I feel like I deserve to be where I am now. Whereas for the last couple of years, I've felt like a real imposter. So it feels nice to like really settle into that. And of course I still get really nervous and over prep probably more than I need to. But I think I'm at this point now where I'm like stirring this cauldron and I can just feel that like something big and something really exciting is around the corner. So I'm just waiting for what that thing might be.
Oh, epic. I mean, there's such a lesson in this, like the power of patience and like trusting and like also just being a yes person, which is like so you. I just feel like you're so good at just being like, yes, actually to your detriment sometimes.
So, yeah.
But no risk, no reward.
No risk, no reward, baby.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think we've been talking for fucking ages.
So
sorry.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, should we just check in with, what's helping you to slow down at the moment?
What is helping me to slow down right now, actually, and always, is music. I think I've maybe touched on how important music is to me in previous episodes. It's honestly like I could not live without music in my life. Like music just transports me into so many different spaces. Like it takes me back down memory lane. It helps me calm down. It fucking perks me up if I need to go. Like music is everything for me. But what is a bit of a ritual and a routine for me actually, and particularly recently because my housemate Portia's been away. She's been working her ass off. Love her. But because she's been away in Sydney working on the Ned Brockman thing that's been going on.
Situation.
I've been cranking the tunes. Like I'll get in the shower, I take my little Yui Boom in the shower with me, chuck Adele on in the morning especially. I have this one song, it's called To Be Loved by Adele and it's like rinse and repeat.
Go on.
You know, I feel like I sound so good when I sing it with
go on. Give the people what they want. Come on.
No.
Wow, I really thought you were going to go for it there.
That made me ick. But yeah, I have been just getting in the shower in the morning and I just blare the tunes and I sing at the top of my lungs and it just makes me feel good. Maybe it doesn't help me slow down. I think it does. It's like even because she's been away, I've been having the music on while I've been cooking, listening to the Teskey brothers.
Yes.
And it's just so calming and I love being able to just sing and carry on in the house or if I'm in the car, like I'll usually be blaring like a Chris Brown or a Drake or a Kendrick or something like that. And I don't know, music is everything for me and it makes me feel really good.
I actually speak to my clients a lot about the role of music as like a resource, like just like knowing a genre or at least a song or 2 or 3 songs that are for certain moments in time, like one for when you're noticing you're becoming really fearful or anxious or stressed, and not like when that, like obviously there are so many different situations that you could apply it to. But yeah, music does things.
It does.
Yeah.
I love it. So that is me. And I don't think that will ever change for me, but I've certainly noticed of late while I've had the house to myself, how nice it's been to not have the telly on and just have music in the background always. What about you?
Oh, well, I was going to say something else, but now I've changed my mind because I had 2 things today, but I'll save the other one. Coming back to surfing, obviously I've just been away for 2 weeks, and my like one non-negotiable on the retreat is that I still surf every day. So I get an hour and a half at least, just not necessarily by myself because I'm usually with some of the guests or Loretta if no one else. And yeah, that's just like my moment in time just to like take a breath, regroup internally. And also in Sri Lanka, the water's 28 degrees Celsius. So you're surfing without a wetsuit or anything. You're just straight in the water. It removes all of the barriers to entry that you get in Melbourne when you're putting on your wetsuit and your booties and
it's probably raining.
Yeah, it's raining and freezing cold. So but the reason why I mention it because I think there's something in it for other people as well. Like surfing is not for everyone. For me, it is just like transformational. And I think the biggest reason is because you can't do it with technology. Like you cannot take your phone into the ocean. Well, I mean, you probably can these days, but I don't. And having that time where I'm completely switched off from all technology, where literally no one can contact me, that for me is amazing. But it's also a flow state. Like often when I'm in the water and when I'm like having a good surf and catching a couple of waves, I actually lose sense of memory and time. Like sometimes I'll catch a wave and in the moment of being on the wave, it's like the best feeling. Anyone who surfs like knows the feeling. It's incredible. But then by the time I've jumped off the wave, I've completely forgotten it. I'm like, whoa, what just happened? And that's like this experience of flow state when you're so in the moment of something that it's slippery. And sometimes I'll get to the end of a surf, be out in the water for like 2 hours and I'll have no memory in the best way. In like, I know that I've been so present and had so much fun, but I'm just like, that was that. And now here I am and I feel very mentally refreshed.
Oh, that's so nice.
Oh, it's like the best feeling in the whole world. And I think there's something in it for other people because surfing's not for everyone, but having some practice, hobby, activity, a place or whatever it is that actually allows you to find some quality of flow state. Like, and I can't remember the exact definition of flow state. There is one. It's something around when you're engaging in an activity that is slightly outside of your skill set. So it's slightly challenging, but not so challenging that it's too hard. So it's like you have to be mentally focused and engaged on what you're doing or you're not going to be able to do it right. But it's not too hard that you can't do it or it's frustrating. And there's like this sweet spot. And so I really like, for me, when I'm surfing, I notice a difference in my mental health and my physical health and everything else. But I hope for other people that they also find practices and habits and hobbies and experiences that allow them to enter into some sense of, we'll call it flow state or call it presence or call it disconnection from all other things. Because, yeah, for me, when I'm engaging in those periods of time, my life just feels slower. It's not, but it feels slower because I'm more present to it. And actually we have way more like ability to manipulate time than we think. We're always like, oh my God, life is moving so quickly. It's like, well, it's not. Life's always moving at the same pace. It's how present you are to life that determines how quickly it moves. And so for me, when I'm engaging in practices that allow me to be present, time moves more slowly and I live longer.
Oh, best. Girl.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think you, me, Guy, and Portia, we've been talking about this for a little while. I really want to go on a surfing trip.
Great.
I'd rather go in Sri Lanka because I hate getting in the fucking freezing cold water here, but that's okay. I'll grin and bear it
But
for
it is,
flow
it's
state.
less windy in winter. Typically the surf is actually better in Melbourne in winter, which is shit because it's so cold. But when there's no wind and it's glassy and the sun is rising and there's fucking dolphins and you're just there, like,
Let's do it.
what cold? What cold?
Yeah.
What
and
is
the cold's good for the soul.
Yeah, that's it,
when
babe.
you get past
Yeah.
it. So let's definitely lock that in soon,
Yep.
please.
Noted. Maybe, oh my God, maybe we should do a rushing slowly surf lesson. Megzy just looked at me like, absolutely not. No, but we could do like a little like surf hangout.
Oh, actually, shit, we should probably plug our community event.
I
This
think
will
this will
probably
be too late.
Yeah, damn.
Sorry, you guys missed it.
Okay, cool.
Never mind. Anyway,
Next one.
Okay, more community events to come.
Okay, that'll
Okay.
do for us for one day.
All right, pleasure chatting with you.
See ya. Great to see you.
See you next
So nice to see you, nice and bronzed and back. Let's go. The content discussed in this podcast is for informational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional mental health advice, diagnosis, or treatment. If any of the topics we've covered today feel overwhelming, we recommend seeking individual support. If you or someone you know is experiencing a mental health crisis, please contact Lifeline on 13 11 14 or 13 Yarn on 13 92 76.